The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor of our Cherry Creek mansion as I watched my fiancée, Jessica, wrap her arms around my father's neck. They were slow dancing to our wedding song while I stood frozen. In the doorway, still wearing the tuxedo I'd picked out for our rehearsal dinner, what made it worse wasn't just the betrayal, it was hearing her whisper, "I've always been attracted to successful, established men, Rick," while my father smiled. That charming smile that had fooled Denver's elite for years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The same smile that masked the truth nobody knew. Every dollar in his fortune came from the AI algorithm I'd created in my college dorm room, the one he'd claimed as his own brilliant business insight. As Jessica noticed me standing there, she didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Instead, she lifted her chin defiantly and said the words that would change everything. "Ryan, your father and I need to talk to you about the wedding. We've decided it should be postponed indefinitely." The whole nightmare started 3 weeks earlier when Marcus Webb, as my father's so-called business partner, decided to throw his annual summer gala at the Mountain View Country Club. I should have known something was wrong when Jessica spent 2 hours getting ready, trying on 3 different dresses before settling on the emerald green one that she knew made her look stunning. She'd barely spent that much time preparing for our own engagement party 6 months ago. "Ryan, hurry up. We can't be late to Marcus's event," she called from downstairs, her voice carrying that impatient tone I'd been hearing more often lately. I straightened my tie one last time and headed down to find her pacing by the front door, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror for what must have been the 10th time. During the drive to the country club, Jessica kept adjusting her makeup and asking questions about who would be there. "Will your father be bringing anyone special?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I should have paid more attention to the way her eyes lit up when I mentioned that Rick Carter would be making his grand entrance alone, as usual. My father had always been the center of attention at these gatherings, regaling everyone with stories of his business acumen and the revolutionary technology that had transformed Carter Industries from a small investment firm into a billion-dollar empire. The irony wasn't lost on me that everyone at these parties celebrated my father's genius while I stood quietly in the background, knowing the real story. 5 years ago, when I was a senior at University of Colorado Boulder, I'd spent countless sleepless nights developing a predictive AI algorithm that could analyze market trends and investment opportunities with unprecedented accuracy. I was young, naive, and desperate to impress my father, who had always seemed disappointed in my academic pursuits instead of showing interest in the family business. When I finally perfected the algorithm and showed it to him, his eyes had widened, with possibilities I was too inexperienced to fully grasp. "Son, this is incredible," he'd said, putting his hand on my shoulder in a rare moment of paternal pride. "But you know how the business world works. People trust experience and reputation. If we present this as the work of a 22-year-old college student, investors will be skeptical. Let me handle the business side and we'll split everything 50-50 once the company takes off." I'd agreed immediately, just grateful to finally have his approval and excited about our partnership. Within 6 months, Carter Industries had used my algorithm to make investment decisions that generated returns nobody thought possible. My father became the toast of Denver's financial district, featured on magazine covers and invited to speak at conferences across the country. The 50-50 split he'd promised never materialized, and whenever I brought it up, he'd pat my shoulder and say, "Don't worry, son. Everything I build is for the family anyway." That night at Marcus's gala, I watched from across the room as my father commanded attention from a group of influential businessmen, telling them about his latest breakthrough insights in artificial intelligence and market prediction. Jessica had disappeared shortly after we arrived, claiming she needed to freshen up. But I spotted her near the bar, hanging on every word as my father described the intuitive genius behind Carter Industries' success. "Your father is absolutely fascinating," she said, when she finally returned to my side, her cheeks flushed with excitement. I had no idea he was so forward-thinking about technology. The way he explains complex algorithms is just mesmerizing. I felt a knot forming in my stomach as I realized she was talking about my work. My late nights, my breakthrough moments, all credited to the man who'd never written a single line of code in his life. Jessica, you know I'm the one who actually developed those algorithms, right? I've told you this before, she laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Oh, honey, I know you helped with some of the technical details, but let's be realistic. Your father has the vision and experience to turn ideas into empires. That's what real success looks like. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and small talk while I watched Jessica gravitate toward my father whenever possible. She laughed too loudly at his jokes, asked him detailed questions about his business philosophy, and found excuses to touch his arm during conversation. By the time we left the country club, I felt like I was watching my relationship dissolve in real time. Over the following weeks, the situation only got worse. Jessica started finding reasons to visit our family home during the day, and she knew my father would be working from his home office. She'd bring him coffee, ask for career advice, and stay for hours discussing business strategies that were really just rehashed versions of concepts I'd explained to her months earlier. When I questioned her about these visits, she'd brush off my concerns. Ryan, I'm trying to understand your family's business better so I can be a supportive wife, she'd say with that innocent smile that used to make my heart race. Your father is teaching me so much about entrepreneurship and leadership. You should be grateful I'm taking such an interest in your family's legacy. But it wasn't gratitude I felt when I came home early one afternoon to find them in the living room, sitting closer together on the couch than seemed appropriate, their conversation stopping abruptly when I walked in. It wasn't gratitude when I noticed how Jessica's entire demeanor changed around my father, becoming more animated and flirtatious than I'd seen her in months. And it definitely wasn't gratitude when I overheard her on the phone with her friend Sarah saying, I'm starting to think I might have chosen the wrong Carter man. The final straw came exactly 3 weeks before our rehearsal dinner disaster. I'd been working late in my home office, debugging some new code for a project I was developing independently, when I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Jessica was supposed to be at her book club, and my father rarely stayed for dinner anymore, preferring to network at upscale restaurants around the city. Curiosity got the better of me, and I crept downstairs to find them sitting at our kitchen island, sharing a bottle of wine that looked far too expensive for a casual evening chat. My father was leaning across the counter, his hand covering Jessica's, while she gazed at him with an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Rick, you're so different from Ryan, she was saying, her voice soft and admiring. He's sweet, but he doesn't have your presence, your power. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like with someone who really knows how to command respect. My father's response made my blood run cold. Jessica, you're a remarkable woman who deserves to be with someone who can give you the life you want. Someone who's already built an empire, not someone still trying to figure out his place in the world. I backed away before I could hear more, my heart pounding as the full scope of their betrayal became clear. This wasn't just emotional infidelity. They were planning something together, discussing a future that didn't include me, despite the engagement ring on Jessica's finger and the wedding invitations already sent to 200 guests. That night, lying in bed next to Jessica as she pretended to sleep, I finally understood that the woman I'd planned to marry had never really seen me at all. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She'd fallen in love with the idea of being connected to the Carter fortune and reputation, never caring about the real source of our family's success. Tomorrow, I decided, it would be time to remind everyone exactly who had built the empire they all admired so much. The next morning brought a phone call that changed everything. Lily Chen's voice on the other end sounded urgent as she explained that tech venture Capital was interested in acquiring the rights to my original AI algorithm, but they wanted to deal directly with the actual creator, not through Carter Industries. Ryan, they've done their homework, Lily said, her words rushing together with excitement. They know the algorithms, fingerprints, the coding style, even the specific mathematical models you used. They're offering $30 million for exclusive rights, but only if you can prove you're the original developer. I sat in my home office, staring at the folders full of documentation I'd kept from my college days. Every iteration of the code, every breakthrough moment. Every late-night debugging session was meticulously recorded in my personal files. I'd always been thorough, a habit that now seemed like divine intervention. The problem is, I told Lily, legally, the algorithm belongs to Carter Industries. My father made sure of that when we first implemented it. That's where it gets interesting, she replied. I've been doing some digging through public records and patent filings. Your father never actually filed for patent protection on the core algorithm. He was so focused on keeping it secret for competitive advantage that he never legally secured ownership of the intellectual property itself. The implications hit me like lightning. The algorithm had never been properly patented or legally transferred to Carter Industries, and I had documented proof of my original development work. Then technically I still owned the rights to my own creation. That afternoon, while Jessica was at another one of her mysterious lunch appointments, I drove to the University of Colorado Boulder to meet with Professor Martinez, my former computer science advisor. His office still smelled like coffee and old textbooks, exactly as I remembered from my student days. Ryan Carter, he said with genuine warmth, gesturing for me to sit in the same chair where I'd first explained my algorithm concept years ago. I was wondering when you'd come back to discuss this. You knew about the situation with my father? I asked, surprised by his directness. Professor Martinez leaned back in his chair, studying me over his wire-rimmed glasses. Son, I've been teaching for 30 years. I've seen brilliant students have their work appropriated by family members, business partners, and employers more times than I care to count. The difference is, most of them don't have the foresight to maintain detailed documentation like you did. He pulled out a thick folder from his filing cabinet, labeled with my name and graduation year. Inside were copies of every project submission, every algorithm iteration, and every progress report I'd filed during my senior year. University policy requires us to keep comprehensive records of all student research projects, he explained. Your AI algorithm development was officially registered as an independent study under my supervision. That means there's an institutional paper trail proving you were the sole creator. It's timestamps and version control that predates any Carter Industries implementation by 6 months. Walking back to my car, I felt a mixture of vindication and nervous energy. The first time in years, I had concrete proof of something I'd known all along, but the question remained. What was I going to do with this information? The answer came sooner than expected. That evening, Jessica returned from her lunch appointment glowing with excitement, practically bouncing as she entered our shared apartment near downtown Denver. Ryan, you'll never guess what happened today, she said, not bothering to hide. Her enthusiasm? Your father invited me to be his guest at the annual Colorado Business Summit next week. He said I have natural instincts for entrepreneurship and that he wants to introduce me to some important contacts. The Colorado Business Summit was the biggest networking event of the year for the state's elite business community. My father had been a featured speaker for the past 3 years, always presenting himself as a self-made technology visionary. The idea of Jessica accompanying him as his guest, while I remained uninvited and unacknowledged, felt like the ultimate insult. Jessica, don't you think it's a little inappropriate for my fiancée to be attending business events as my father's date? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes with an expression I'd never seen her direct at me before. It's not a date, Ryan. It's networking. Your father understands that successful people need to build relationships with other successful people. Maybe if you showed more initiative in building your own career instead of just working on little coding projects, you'd understand the value of these connections. Little coding projects. That's how she described the work that had generated hundreds of millions in revenue for Carter Industries. In that moment, I realized that Jessica had never truly understood or valued what I brought to the relationship. She saw me as the lesser Carter, the one without the polish and presence to command respect in Denver's business circles. You know what, Jessica? You're absolutely right, I said, surprising her with my sudden agreement. I should be more focused on building my own career and establishing my own reputation. The next few days passed in a strange calm as I made preparations for what I now knew was inevitable. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in intellectual property disputes, providing him with all my documentation and the university records Professor Martinez had shared. I reached out to Tech Venture Capital through Lily, letting them know I was interested in discussing their acquisition offer. Most importantly, I started making copies of financial records and business documents that proved how my algorithm had been the foundation of Carter Industries' success. Jessica, meanwhile, spent those same days shopping for the perfect outfit to wear to the business summit, asking my opinion on dresses and jewelry as if nothing had changed between us. She seemed genuinely excited about the opportunity to network with Colorado's business elite, was completely oblivious to the fact that her enthusiasm for my father's world was destroying our relationship. The night before the summit, I found her in our bedroom, trying on different combinations of earrings and necklaces in front of the mirror. She looked beautiful, radiant even, in a way that made my chest tighten with loss for what we used to. "Have, Jessica," I said quietly. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She turned from the mirror, her expression curious but guarded. "What is it? If you had to choose between me and my father, who would you pick?" The question hung in the air between us for a long moment. I watched her face carefully, hoping to see some flicker of loyalty or love that would give me reason to fight for our relationship. Instead, she laughed. Actually laughed, as if I'd asked something ridiculous. "Ryan, that's such a silly question. Why would I ever have to choose? You're both important to me in different ways." "But if you did have to choose," I pressed. "If circumstances forced you to pick one Carter man over the other, which would it be?" This time, she didn't laugh. Her expression grew serious, calculating, as if she was weighing options I couldn't see. "Honestly," she said finally, "I'd have to think about what would be best for my future." "For our future? Your father has already built something substantial. He has connections, influence, resources. He's established in ways that, well, in ways that you're still working toward." Her words hit like physical blows, each one confirming what I'd suspected but hoped wasn't true. Jessica wasn't choosing between two men. She was choosing between two versions of success, and in her mind, I represented potential while my father represented achievement. "I see," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "Thank you for being honest." She turned back to the mirror, apparently satisfied that she'd handled my concerns reasonably. "Don't worry so much, honey. Tomorrow night at the summit is going to be amazing. Your father promised to introduce me to the CEO of Mountain Ridge Investments. Can you imagine the opportunities that could open up?" As I watched her practice, her networking smile in the mirror, I realized that tomorrow night was indeed going to be amazing, just not in the way any of us expected. Because while Jessica and my father were busy charming Colorado's business elite with stories about visionary leadership and technological innovation, I would be 40 miles away in a lawyer's office, signing papers that would reveal the truth about who had really built the Carter Industries empire. The only question remaining was whether they'd figure out what was happening before it was too late to stop it. The Colorado Business Summit was in full swing at the Grand Hyatt downtown. When I walked into my lawyer's office 40 miles away in Boulder, through his window, I could see the lights of the city where Jessica and my father were undoubtedly holding court. Charming investors and business leaders who had no idea they were celebrating stolen genius. "Mr. Carter," Jonathan Hayes said, spreading the documents across his mahogany desk. "I've reviewed everything you've provided, and I have to say, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of intellectual property theft I've encountered. The university timestamps, your personal development logs, and the fact that no proper patent was ever filed creates a perfect storm for reclaiming ownership." I signed my name on document after document, each signature feeling like a small act of rebellion against years of being overlooked and undervalued. The final paper was a cease and desist order that would be delivered to Carter Industries first thing Monday morning, demanding they stop using my algorithm immediately or face legal action. "There's something else you should know, Jonathan," said as I finished signing. I did some additional research into Carter Industries' financial structure. Your algorithm isn't just a part of their success, Ryan. It is their success. Without it, the company's valuation drops by approximately 80%. Your father's entire reputation as a business genius hinges on technology he never created. The weight of that revelation settled over me as I drove back toward Denver. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Jessica, sending me photos from the summit. Pictures of her laughing with influential CEOs, raising champagne glasses with venture capitalists, and in every single photo, my father was right beside her, his hand possessively placed on her lower back, having the most amazing night. To read. One message. Your dad just introduced me to the governor's wife. I feel like I finally understand what real success looks like. Real success. I thought about the countless nights I'd spent hunched over my computer, solving problems that seemed impossible, creating something genuinely innovative from nothing but mathematical theory and stubborn determination. But to Jessica, real success apparently meant schmoozing with politicians and posing for photos at exclusive events. When I got home to our apartment, I found a note on the kitchen counter written in Jessica's flowing handwriting. Staying at your father's house tonight. The summit runs late, and it's closer to the venue. Don't wait up. So. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then immediately pulled it back out and smoothed it flat. This note would be evidence, I realized. Evidence of the night. Everything changed. The night my fiancée chose to sleep under my father's roof instead of coming home to me. Unable to sleep, I spent the entire night organizing my thoughts and preparing for what I knew would be the most difficult conversation of my life. By morning, I had made a decision that would alter the course of everything. At 8 a.m. sharp, I called Marcus Webb. As my father's business partner and closest friend, Marcus had always treated me with polite indifference, seeing me as Rick Carter's unremarkable son rather than a person worth knowing independently. But Marcus was also a shrewd businessman who would understand the implications of what I was about to tell him. Ryan, Marcus answered, sounding surprised. Shouldn't you be sleeping off whatever celebration happened after last night's summit? Marcus, I need to meet with you immediately. It's about Carter Industries and information that could destroy the company if it becomes public. The urgency in my voice must have convinced him because he agreed to meet me at his office within the hour. When I arrived, Marcus was already there with coffee and a concerned expression. What's this about, Ryan? Your father mentioned you've been acting strange lately. I pulled out copies of all my documentation and spread them across his conference table. Marcus, everything you think you know about Carter Industries' success is wrong. The AI algorithm that made the company worth $500 million? I created it. My father has been taking credit for my work for 5 years. Marcus studied the papers with the intensity of someone who had built his own fortune by paying attention to details others missed. His expression grew increasingly grave as he reviewed the university records, the development logs, and the timeline that clearly showed my original work predating any Carter Industries implementation. Jesus Christ, Ryan, he whispered finally. Do you realize what this means? If this information goes public, it won't just hurt your father's reputation. It'll destroy the company's stock price, void our investor agreements, and probably trigger a dozen lawsuits from people who invested based on Rick's supposed expertise. I know exactly what it means, I said calmly. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Marcus leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his graying hair. What do you want, Ryan? Money? Recognition? Position in the company? We can work something out that benefits everyone. What I want, I said, standing up and gathering my papers, is for people to stop treating me like I'm invisible. What I really wanted was for my fiancée to stop idolizing my father, like he was the genius in the family, when the real genius had been sitting across the dinner table for years, noticed and unappreciated. Your fiancée? Marcus frowned. What does Jessica have to do with this? I handed him my phone. Jessica had sent me photos from the summit pictures of her and my father looking far too close for comfort. Marcus's expression darkened as he scrolled through them. Ryan, he said quietly. I was at the summit too. I saw them together, I thought. I assumed you knew. Knew what? Marcus hesitated, clearly uneasy. They left together around midnight. Your dad told a few people he was driving her home. Said she'd had too much champagne. I saw them getting into the elevator together. They weren't heading for the parking garage. The confirmation hit me hard, but strangely, it also brought clarity. This wasn't just about stolen credit or intellectual property. was betrayal by two people who thought I'd never fight back. Marcus, I said, calm but resolute, you have 24 hours to convince my father to sign over 51% of Carter Industries to me and to publicly acknowledge that I created the technology behind the company's success. If he agrees, we handle this quietly within the family. And if he refuses, then tomorrow morning, I release everything to Tech Venture Capital. They've already offered me $30 million for the exclusive rights to the algorithm. I'll file a lawsuit for intellectual property theft and fraud. Investors, partners, everyone who believed in my father's so-called genius will know the truth. Marcus looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You're serious, dead serious. And when you talk to my father, make sure he understands this is about more than business now.
Right, Jessica made her choice. Now she can
face the consequences. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in years. The overlooked son, always waiting for scraps of recognition, was gone. I finally knew my worth and I wasn't backing down. That afternoon, Jessica called. Her voice trembled with guilt. Ryan, we need to talk. Can we meet at the rooftop restaurant? 7 o'clock? We do need to talk, I said. I'll be there. As I got ready, I knew this would be the last conversation we'd have. As an engaged couple, and I felt strangely at peace. Tomorrow, she and my father would finally understand that the man they'd dismissed had been the architect of everything they admired about the Carter name. The restaurant was buzzing with Denver's usual high-end crowd, but Jessica stood out. She'd chosen a table in the corner, overlooking the mountains. Wearing the same black dress from our engagement party 6 months ago, I couldn't miss. The symbolism, Ryan, she said, forcing a smile. Thank you for coming. I know things have been tense lately. I sat down, noting how carefully she avoided meeting my eyes. Tense is one word for it. The waiter appeared quickly. He clearly recognized her from recent visits with my father. She ordered her usual Pinot Grigio. I asked for a whiskey neat, something I'd never ordered around her before. That's new, she said, trying to break the tension. Lots of things are new, I replied. She twisted her engagement ring. Nervously, I owe you an explanation about last night. You? She faltered, expecting me to help her out of this. Like, it's not what you think. I had too much to drink. Rick just made sure I got home safely. Rick, not your father. The shift in language said more than her words ever could. Jessica, I said, my voice calm. When you think about our future, what do you see? She perked up, relieved to change the subject. I see us building something incredible together. A big house in Cherry Creek, hosting charity galas, business events. We'd be the couple everyone looks up to. And in that future, what's my role? She blinked, thrown off. You're my husband, the man who gives me that life. But how, Jessica? What exactly do I contribute to this dream of yours? She looked genuinely puzzled like. It had never occurred to her to ask. In her mind, I was simply the access point to the Carter name and legacy. Nothing more. She had never once stopped to consider my worth as an individual. You're a Carter, she said at last, as if that settled the matter. Your family has wealth, influence, connections. That's what really matters in this world, Ryan. That's how people succeed. What if I told you everything you think you know about Carter Industries is wrong? Jessica laughed, cold, dismissive, a sound I was becoming all too familiar with. What are you talking about? Everyone knows. Your dad built the company from scratch. I pulled out my phone and opened a folder full of photos, images of pages covered in my original algorithm designs, equations, and code. Jessica, I developed the technology that made Carter Industries what it is today. Every dollar my family has made in the last 5 years came from my work, not my father's. She glanced at the screen but didn't really look. Her skepticism was obvious. Ryan, I know you helped with some of the tech stuff, but your father is the one with the vision. He's the leader. He's the one who turned your ideas into something real. That's what entrepreneurship is. Entrepreneurship, I echoed, letting the word hang. So tell me, what exactly do you think he did besides taking credit? For my work, he built relationships. He found investors. He ran the company. Not everyone's a coder, Ryan. Someone has to think big picture. There it was. The thin veil of respect finally dropped, replaced by open contempt. Coding. Geek. That's all I was to her. You're right, I said calmly. Not everyone can create something from nothing. Most people just ride the coattails of someone who can. Her jaw tightened. So now you're saying your father stole your ideas? Ryan, that's petty. He's respected across this city. For a reason, he earned it. He earned it based on my algorithm. No, he earned it by seeing the potential in your little computer project and making it profitable. She snapped. Do you think your code would have done anything? Sitting on a laptop in your dorm room, you made it into something? The way she called it your little computer project, like it was some school hobby, it stunned me. This woman, who once claimed to love me, never actually valued the thing that defined me. Jessica, I said, reaching into my jacket. I want to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. I pulled out the envelope I'd brought and laid it on the table. If you had to choose right now between marrying me without a cent from Carter Industries or continuing a relationship with my father and all the money and influence that comes with him, which would you choose? She blinked like, I'd asked if the sky was blue. That's ridiculous. Why would I ever have to make that choice? Humor me. She set down her wineglass and finally looked me in the eye. Ryan, I love you, but let's be real. I want a certain kind of life, stability, security. If you're asking me to choose between love and a future with no financial footing, then yes, I'd choose what any rational person would. Any rational person, I repeated. Yes. Love doesn't buy homes in Cherry Creek. It doesn't get you country club invites or connect you with people who can launch your career. We can't live off love. I slid the envelope toward her. Then you'll want to read this. She picked up the papers reluctantly and scanned the top page, her brow furrowing. What is this? A patent? It's a full legal transfer. Of intellectual property rights, I said. As of this morning, I own exclusive rights to the AI algorithm that drives 90% of Carter Industries' revenue. I also have documentation proving my father's been passing off my work as his own for years. The blood drained from her face. You can't be serious. It can't be legal. Your father owns the company. He owns a company whose only value comes from my technology, and now I've taken that back. Once this becomes public, which it will, every investor and partner who trusted him is going to demand answers. The company will implode. She looked like she couldn't breathe, but the wedding, everything we planned. I leaned back, watching it all hit her. Jessica, you just told me plainly that you'd pick wealth and status over love. So let me ask you again. Now that I'll be rich, legitimately rich, based on my own work, does that change your answer? Her eyes widened. You'll be wealthy? It's very. And unlike my father, I earned every cent myself. Jessica stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It's a mixture of shock, calculation, and something that might have been regret. Ryan, I had no idea. If I'd known you were the real genius behind everything, you'd what? Have treated me with respect. You'd have valued my contributions. You'd have chosen me over my father. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand, but I pulled away. It's not too late, she said desperately. We can work through this. I made mistakes, but we can start over. Now that I understand how brilliant you really are, now that you understand how profitable I really am, you mean, that's not fair, Ryan. I do love you. I stood up, leaving money on the table for drinks we'd barely touched. Jessica, you love what you think I can give you. You've never loved me as a person. The difference is now I finally understand my own worth, and I know I deserve better than someone who only values me for my bank account. Where are you going? She called as I walked away from the table. To start over with someone who actually sees me, I said without turning back. As I reached the elevator, I heard her heels clicking rapidly across the restaurant floor. She caught up just as the doors opened. Ryan, please, don't throw away everything we have over a misunderstanding. I can change. I can be the woman you need me to be. I looked at her one last time. It's a beautiful woman who had occupied my thoughts and dreams for 2 years and felt nothing but pity. Jessica, the woman I need you to be, doesn't exist. She never did. You've shown me exactly who you are, and I believe you. The elevator doors closed between us, and as I rode down to the parking garage, I pulled out my phone to send a text message to Lily Chen. Are you free for dinner tomorrow? I have something important to tell you. Her response came back immediately. I'd love to. I've been waiting for you to call. For the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. Tomorrow would bring the consequences Jessica and my father had earned through their choices. Tonight, I was finally free. 3 months later, I stood in the conference room of my new company, Carter Innovation Labs, watching through floor-to-ceiling windows as Denver's skyline sparkled in the morning sun. The irony of keeping the Carter name wasn't lost on me, but now it represented something genuine rather than stolen glory. The tech venture acquisition papers are finalized, Lily said, walking into the room with a stack of contracts and that brilliant smile that had become my favorite part of every morning. $30 million for exclusive licensing rights, plus royalties on any future implementations. You're officially a tech mogul now, Mr. Carter. She set the papers on the mahogany table and moved to stand beside me at the window. Over the past 3 months, our relationship had evolved from friendship to partnership to something deeper and more authentic than anything I'd experienced with Jessica. Lily understood the technical aspects of my work, challenged my ideas, and somehow made me feel like the smartest person in any room while never diminishing her own considerable talents. Any word from Marcus about the Carter Industries situation? I asked, though I already knew the answer would be grim. Lily nodded grimly. The stock price dropped another 15% yesterday. 3 major investors have pulled out completely, and the board is calling for your father's resignation. Marcus is trying to hold things together. But without the algorithm that drove their success, you're essentially just another small investment firm with delusions of grandeur. Through our private investigator, we'd been tracking the aftermath of my departure from the family business. The revelation that Rick Carter had built his reputation on stolen intellectual property had sent shockwaves through Denver's business community. Investors who had trusted him with millions based on his supposed technological expertise were now demanding explanations and refunds he couldn't provide. What about Jessica? I asked, though I wasn't sure why I still cared about the answer. Still trying to salvage something from the wreckage, Lily replied with a slight edge to her voice. According to our sources, she's been making the rounds at networking events, telling anyone who will listen that she was deceived by both Carter men and positioning herself as another victim of your father's fraud. I turned away from the window to look at Lily, struck as always by how different she was from Jessica. Where Jessica had been polished and calculated, Lily was genuine and warm. Where Jessica had seen my work as a means to an end, Lily appreciated the elegance of the algorithms themselves and often suggested improvements that made me wonder why I'd ever thought I needed to impress someone who couldn't understand my passion. Do you ever regret how everything turned out? Lily asked softly. You lost your family, your fiancée, everything you thought was your life? I considered the question seriously. I lost people who never really saw me in the first place. My father saw me as a convenient source of uncredited labor. Jessica saw me as a stepping stone to the lifestyle she wanted. Neither of them actually lost me because they never really had me. The intercom buzzed, interrupting our conversation. Carter, my assistant's voice came through clearly. There's a Jessica Morgan here to see you. She says it's urgent and personal. Lily and I exchanged glances. Send her up, I said after a moment. But stay close, in case we need security. 5 minutes later, Jessica walked into my conference room, looking nothing like the polished socialite I remembered. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup was smudged, and there was a desperate edge to her movements that suggested she hadn't been sleeping well. Ryan, she said, her voice cracking slightly. Thank God you agreed to see me. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. What do you want, Jessica? She glanced nervously at Lily, who had positioned herself near the door with her arms crossed. Could we have some privacy? This is a family matter. Lily stays, I said firmly. She's my business partner and my girlfriend. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of her. The word girlfriend seemed to hit Jessica like a physical blow. She stared at Lily with undisguised hostility before turning back to me with tears in her eyes. Ryan, I made terrible mistakes. I was confused and scared about our future, and I let your father manipulate me into thinking he could offer me more security than you could. But I know the truth now. I know you're the real genius, the real success story. I know. chose wrong. You chose exactly what you wanted, I replied calmly. You chose status and wealth over authenticity and love. The only thing that's changed is which Carter man you think can give you those things. Jessica stepped closer, her voice taking on the pleading tone I remembered from our worst arguments. That's not true. I love you, Ryan. I always have. Was just scared of taking risks, scared of betting on potential instead of proven success. But now I see that you were always the safe bet. You were always the one with real value. Real value, I repeated, looking at Lily, whose expression had shifted from protective to openly disgusted. Jessica, do you hear yourself? You're literally trying to win me back by explaining how I'm a better investment than my father. That's not what I meant, she said quickly, but we both knew it was exactly what she meant. Lily stepped forward, her voice ice cold. Actually, Jessica, let me explain something to you about real value. Ryan's algorithm isn't just making him wealthy, it's revolutionizing how predictive analytics work across multiple industries. He's being courted by universities to teach, by think tanks to consult, and by governments to help solve complex economic problems. He's not just rich. He's becoming genuinely influential in ways your shallow social climbing could never understand. Jessica's face flushed red. I wasn't talking to you. But I'm talking to you, Lily continued, moving to stand beside me. Ryan doesn't need someone who values him for his bank account or his business connections. He needs someone who appreciates his mind, his creativity, his integrity, someone who would love him just as much if he were a broke graduate student working on revolutionary ideas in his garage. I reached for Lily's hand, interlacing our fingers. Someone who already did love me when I was that broke graduate student. Jessica stared at our joined hands with an expression of pure devastation. We were together for 2 years, Ryan. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It means I wasted 2 years trying to be enough for someone who was never going to see my worth, I said, gently but firmly. Jessica, I hope you find what you're looking for, but it isn't me. It never really was me. She stood in the middle of my conference room for a long moment, tears streaming down her face, before finally turning toward the door. At the threshold, she paused and looked back one final time. Your father was right about one thing, she said bitterly. You really don't know how to forgive people for their mistakes. You're wrong, I replied. I forgive you completely. I just don't trust you, and I don't want to build a future with someone whose love depends on my net worth. After Jessica left, Lily and I stood together at the window again, watching the city bustle below us. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across downtown Denver, and I found myself thinking about how much my perspective had changed in just a few months. Do you think she'll be okay? Lily asked eventually. She figures something out. I said, Jessica always lands on her feet. She'll find another successful man to attach herself to, probably someone who won't ask too many questions about her motivations. And your father? I sighed, feeling a complex mixture of anger and pity. He'll survive too. Maybe losing everything will teach him the value of earning respect instead of stealing it. Lily turned to face me, her expression serious. Ryan, I need you to know something. Even if your algorithm had never made a penny, even if Carter Industries had never existed, I would still be standing here with you. I fell in love with the person who stayed up all night explaining mathematical theories to me, not the person who became wealthy from those theories. I kissed her then, tasting the promise of a future built on genuine understanding and mutual respect. Through the window, Denver's lights began to twinkle as evening approached, and I realized that for the first time in my adult life, I was exactly where I belonged. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. This one. Hit the mark. You won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.